All right, so guys, we are in the final week of this Stand series, and we're talking about what is probably the most famous passage in 1 Thessalonians in 4 and the beginning of 5, where Paul talks about the return of Jesus. It's a passage that has been quoted probably the most out of anything that he's written in this letter. And I want to get into what we're going to talk about today by way of another story that I was just reminded of the other day. There's the miniseries Band of Brothers, right, that talks about, these soldiers in World War II. And there's this story that kind of unfolds in the middle of it where, one of the privates in the battalion, as they're getting kind of into their first battle, like he just can't take it and he's scared of it and he hides from the battle and he just stays there the whole time. Nothing ever happens. And, after the battle, his lieutenant is talking to him, and the lieutenant says, well, you know what your problem is? Your problem is that you have hope. And the only way you can do what a soldier does is to realize that you're already dead.
It's encouraging.
And but I think I share that to say I think what Paul is doing here is flipping that on its head.
Yeah.
Is that he's looking at these Christians who have already been through so much and who are going through so much that he's encouraged to stand. And he said, no. Your problem is that you don't have enough hope. Mm-hmm. And the only way you can do what you're going to need to do is to realize that you're already alive. And he reminds them of that truth as he goes throughout this story of what's going to happen when Jesus returns. So Sarah, as Paul describes Jesus' second coming, he pictures it as kind of this emissary coming back, that Jesus comes down from heaven, we meet him, and kind of escort him into this new reality that we're in with his return. So as you read through this description that Paul talks about, as you read through this passage about the second coming, what do you see here?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing I see is that he is coming back. I think that's the first thing is hey, and you can be prepared one of two ways, because in verse 2 of chapter 5, he says he's coming back like a thief in the night, and that no one knows the time or the hour. And no one really expects to be robbed, right? You don't really live your life expecting to be robbed. However, there's two different ways you can prepare for a robbery in the middle of the night. One way you can prepare is not to prepare. Don't lock your door. Don't have, safety things installed on your house. I don't know, all our ring alarms and all the things. And then the other way is to be prepared. And so he says, for those who are asleep, so let us not be like others who are asleep, but let us be alert and self-controlled. And so this is where he's telling the people, okay, he is coming back, so this is how you should live. Be alert, be self-controlled, live holy lives. We should plan, we should be ready, because he is coming back. And so Paul writes, we belong to the light, so don't be asleep. Be alert. He says, be self-controlled, live holy lives. And I also love that he says we're going to live with the Lord forever, because that's a really awesome thing to think about in chapter 4, verse 17. And so I just love that he's hey, he's coming back, but also be prepared for that. Don't be caught off guard.
Well, and it's interesting that he has to write this to the church, because it seems like what we can gather from 1 Thessalonians and then 2 is that this church has some confusion about all this. Yeah. They've been taught, hey, Jesus is coming back, but they're looking around them and they can't make sense of it. Well, if Jesus is Lord and Jesus is coming back, then why are we suffering? Why are we going through this persecution? Why are people dying? We have Christian brothers and sisters who are dying. Does that mean that they don't have that hope anymore? Does that mean they weren't good enough for the resurrection, for the return of Jesus? And they're really struggling to understand how, the reality of that day is congruent with what's going on in their lives. So Derek, as you think about them receiving this message from Paul, how would that have encouraged them? How would that have challenged them?
Yeah, I think it would have been a great encouragement, because I can't help but think that, they've had friends or family members that have been persecuted by the people there. They've died. They've gone through some really hard situations. And I think that example you brought up with the Band of Brothers is perfect, because we have to strive to hold on to so much hope in our life. And I can only imagine, if you are physically being persecuted for your faith, and it's an everyday battle, holding on to hope of knowing that your king is coming back probably is what keeps you getting up in the morning. Right. It helps you keep moving forward of okay. It's not so much of in the Band of Brothers of okay, I have to believe that I'm just dead and then I'm just going to keep pushing forward until I actually die. But it's, we want to keep pushing forward in hope, because Jesus is coming back.
Yeah. And it's a little bit outside the scope of the study we're doing. It's interesting that Paul revisits this in 2 Thessalonians, right? That he comes back, and this time he is much more, not so much encouraging as saying he's coming back with justice and with judgment, that all these people who have persecuted you, all of these things that you've gone through, he's going to make them right. He, at the beginning of chapter 1, he talks about this very vividly about this is hope that everything that you've gone through is going to be restored. So Sarah, the centerpiece of this is there in 4:18, where Paul says, therefore encourage one another with these words. And I have to admit that as I read that and think about that, that is not often what end times passages do for us, right?
Right.
Like you think about Revelation, you either get scared, you get confused by it. People want to argue about it. Like even this passage in 1 Thessalonians 4, there are things people want to argue about. Like, well, is this describing a rapture? Is this describing something? Like, what is Paul talking about? And it becomes controversial and it becomes scary. So what does it look like for us to be encouraged by it? How has Paul talked about that throughout the letter? How do we live that way?
Yeah, I think it's been the same messaging. Like if you read this entire letter, those words don't come as a shock to you because how he lays out the urgency of the gospel. In the first part of this book, of the people in Thessalonica were so intentional about sharing their faith, even in the midst of all of this opposition. And I love, Derek, how you said they pushed forward in hope and they believed that he would return. They believed this message. And so they wanted to see the world changed. And kind of going back to our very first week in chapter 1, I think those verses 9 and 10 can be the summary of this entire book, right? Turn from idols, turn to God, serve him, wait for Jesus. Even though you're facing persecution, turn from your idols, turn to God, serve him, live holy lives like we talked about last week, living to please God, and wait for Jesus to return because he is coming back one day. And, I think we're always waiting on something, right? As a single person, waiting on marriage. If you're married, you're waiting on kids. If you have kids, you're waiting on them to move out, right? That's the joke. And so we're always waiting on something, but we wait with hope, right? Even if so many of my expectations and hopes and dreams for my life are unmet here on earth, I still have hope because Jesus is going to come back one day and make all of those things right, even the justice part, like you said. And so I think this book has really challenged me because if I really believe Jesus is coming back one day, then I should live with that urgency of sharing the gospel. And I think of my friends, right? I want them to be in heaven with me forever, like Paul writes about, and this weighs so heavily on me because I cannot keep that hope for myself. If I truly believe there is a king who is coming back one day, then I have to have that urgency of the gospel as well. I need to share that hope with other people.
My name is Amy Coleman. I live in Sellersburg, Indiana, and I've been a part of Southeast for about 12 years. Back in, right before COVID, I received an invitation to co-host for SE Online. And at the time I wasn't serving, and I'd really been stirring in my heart what I needed to do and to be a part of giving back. And so I got started with SE Online through co-hosting on Sunday mornings. That led into becoming a group leader. And I have been a part of leading an international Bible study for about 5 years. And I've loved every minute of it. In 2014, I received a diagnosis that I never expected. I was diagnosed with 4 blood cancers. With that diagnosis, I was given 5 to 8 years to live. At the time, my kids were in middle school, and for the most part, I had 5 children. And at that point, I didn't know if I would live long enough to see them graduate. When I came to Southeast, it was really the first time that I learned what grace was and what the hope of Jesus was. So when I sat in that chair and I was told that I had cancer and I was told that I only had 5 to 8 years to live, I had absolutely no fear because I knew who Jesus was. So I'm now walking in year 12 of that cancer journey. With every hump in the road, I have looked to the Lord. Serving is huge in my life. Serving, being a part, I'm living on purpose and getting a chance to tell my story it means that it's not in vain. It means that maybe there is somebody out there that just heard a diagnosis. You know, there's that scripture that says, take joy when you're surrounded by trouble on all sides. I have been there. It's knowing that there's hope in Jesus. There's hope of heaven. There's hope of being set free from the things of this world, from the diagnoses and the discouragements, the disappointments, the grief. It all goes away. It all goes away. And there will be joy, and there will be freedom from the things of this world.